Picture this. You're 21 years old. Your biggest worry should be whether you can afford pizza for dinner. Most people your age are surviving on ramen noodles and wondering if they'll ever pay off their student loans, but not me. I decided to buy a car that cost more than most people's houses. A Bugatti Chiron, $3 million, at 21. Now, before you think I'm some trust fund kid who never worked a day in his life, let me stop you right there. I wish it were that simple. The truth is so much weirder, so much more ridiculous, and involves a lot more luck than anyone has a right to expect. It all started when I was 19. I was working at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle, making lattes for tech bros who'd tip me in cryptocurrency advice. "Dude, you should totally get into Dogecoin," they'd say, while I'm thinking, "Sir, I can barely afford the bus fare home." But here's the thing about being broke and young. You have nothing to lose. So when my roommate Jake showed me this new app he'd been messing around with, I figured, why not? The app was called Pixel Pets. Think Tamagotchi meets Pokemon Go, but with blockchain technology. I know, it sounds ridiculous now, but this was 2022, and everything with blockchain in it was apparently worth billions. Jake had spent his entire paycheck, all $400 of it, buying these digital pets. Little pixelated creatures that you could feed, train, and breed. I laughed at him, called him an idiot, said he'd lost his mind. Then he showed me his account balance. $40,000 in 3 weeks from digital pets. I nearly choked on my own spit. Here I was, working 40 hours a week, smelling like espresso, and getting yelled at by customers who couldn't handle the fact that we were out of oat milk, and Jake, who once tried to microwave a burrito with the wrapper still on it, had made more money than I'd see in 2 years. So naturally, I did what any rational person would do. I took my life savings, all $127 of it, and bought the cheapest pixel pet I could find. A little blue thing that looked like a cross between a hamster and a disco ball. I named him Sparkles. Now I need you to understand something. I knew nothing about cryptocurrency, NFTs, or blockchain technology. I couldn't even figure out how to connect my phone to the coffee shop's Wi-Fi half the time. But I had something more valuable than technical knowledge. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, which meant I made all the right moves by accident. While everyone else was trying to game the system, buying rare pets and complex breeding combinations, I was just playing. I fed Sparkles when he was hungry. I played games with him when he was bored. I even bought him little digital accessories because they were cute. Turns out the algorithm rewarded genuine engagement. Who knew? Within a month, Sparkles had evolved into something called a legendary cosmic hamster. Apparently one of only 12 in existence. People started messaging me, offering insane amounts of money for him. We're talking 6 figures for a digital hamster. But here's where it gets really stupid. I said no, not because I was being strategic, but because I'd gotten attached to Sparkles. I know how that sounds. I was emotionally invested in a collection of pixels, but he'd been my companion through long, boring shifts at the coffee shop. He'd been there when I was stressed about rent, when I was worried about my future, when I was eating cereal for dinner because it was all I could afford. So I kept playing. I bred Sparkles with other rare pets. I discovered new areas in the game. I even started a little blog about pixel pet strategies, which somehow got thousands of followers who thought I was some kind of genius. The offers kept coming. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. I kept saying no, not out of business savvy, but out of pure, stubborn attachment to my digital pet. Then came the message that changed everything. A collector from Dubai offered me $1.2 million for Sparkles. Not for my entire collection, just for Sparkles. One digital hamster, $1.2 million. I stared at that message for 3 hours. I called in sick to work. I paced around my tiny apartment, which suddenly felt even smaller. I calculated how many lattes I'd have to make to earn that much money. The answer was approximately 240,000 lattes, which would take me about 47 years at my current rate. I called my mom. Big mistake. "You're going to sell your what for how much?" she screamed. "Have you lost your mind? What even is a pixel pet? Is this some kind of drug thing?" I tried to explain, but how do you explain to your mother that you've accidentally become a millionaire because you were nice to a digital hamster? After a week of agonizing, I made the deal. $1.2 million for Sparkles. I actually cried when I transferred him to the new owner. The buyer was surprisingly understanding. He said he'd take good care of him and send me updates. To this day, I still get monthly photos of Sparkles in his new digital mansion, surrounded by rare items and other legendary pets. He looks happy. I tell myself he's living his best life. So there I was, 20 years old with over $1 million in my bank account. After taxes, fees, and setting aside money for college and my parents' mortgage, I had about $800,000 left. A reasonable person would have invested it, bought a house, or at least a reliable car. But reasonable people don't accidentally become millionaires from digital pets. I'd always been obsessed with cars. Not in a rich kid way. I couldn't afford to be. But I'd spend hours watching car videos, reading about exotic supercars, dreaming about machines I'd never be able to afford. The Bugatti Chiron was my absolute dream car. 1,479 horsepower, 261 miles per hour top speed, a price tag that made most people's mortgages look like pocket change. I told myself I was just going to look, just walk around the dealership, maybe sit in one, take some photos, live the dream for an afternoon. The Bugatti dealership in Beverly Hills is not a place for 21-year-olds in thrift store jeans and coffee-stained hoodies. The salesman looked at me like I'd wandered in from a homeless shelter. I almost left right then. But then I saw her, a 2018 Bugatti Chiron in Atlantic blue. She was just sitting there, perfect and gleaming under the showroom lights. I'd never seen anything so beautiful in my life. "Can I help you?" the salesman asked in a tone that clearly meant, "Can I help you find the exit?" "I'd like to look at the Chiron," I said, trying to sound confident. He laughed, actually laughed. "Son, do you know how much that car costs?" That's when I pulled out my phone and showed him my bank account. His expression went from condescending to confused to extremely interested in about 3 seconds. "I'll get the manager," he said, suddenly very respectful. The next hour was a blur of paperwork, insurance calls, and increasingly frantic phone calls to my bank to verify that yes, I actually had the money, and no, it wasn't from illegal activities. The manager, a sophisticated woman named Patricia, handled everything personally. She didn't ask too many questions about how a 21-year-old barista came to have $3 million in cash. She just made sure everything was legal and legitimate. "This is quite unusual," she said, reviewing my paperwork. "Most of our younger clients are, well, they're usually not this young." I nodded, not really sure what to say. What was I supposed to tell her? That I'd made my fortune being nice to a digital hamster? When she handed me the keys, I almost dropped them. They were heavier than I expected, both physically and metaphorically. These weren't just car keys. They were the keys to a machine that cost more than most people would make in their entire lifetimes. "Would you like us to deliver it to your home?" Patricia asked. I almost said yes, but then I realized I lived in a sketchy neighborhood where a Bugatti would last approximately 12 minutes before being stripped for parts. "I'll drive it," I said, trying to sound casual. Starting a Bugatti Chiron is like waking up a sleeping dragon. The engine doesn't just turn on, it roars to life with a sound that makes your chest vibrate. Every eye in the dealership was on me as I adjusted the mirrors, familiarized myself with the controls, and tried not to look like I was about to have a panic attack. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd learned to drive in my mom's 2003 Honda Civic with a broken air conditioner and a radio that only picked up Christian talk radio. Now I was behind the wheel of one of the fastest cars ever made. Driving a Chiron for the first time is indescribable. It's like being strapped to a rocket that's somehow also the most comfortable chair you've ever sat in. The steering wheel costs more than most people's cars. The sound system is so perfect it makes you emotional. But here's the thing nobody tells you about owning a supercar. It's absolutely terrifying. Every parking lot becomes a minefield. Every other driver becomes a potential threat. I spent the first week afraid to drive faster than 35 miles per hour because I was convinced I'd accidentally engage some kind of race mode and launch myself into orbit. The attention was overwhelming. People would literally stop and stare. They'd take photos. Some would follow me, trying to get videos for their social media. I had to learn to check for people hiding behind the car before I backed up, because apparently lying down next to a Bugatti for Instagram photos is a thing. My neighbors thought I was either a drug dealer or had joined a cult. Mrs. Henderson from apartment 3B cornered me in the hallway one day. "What exactly do you do for work, honey?" she asked, eyeing me suspiciously. "I'm in digital asset management," I said, which was technically true. She nodded like she understood, but I could see her mentally preparing to call the FBI. Dating became weird too. I learned quickly never to mention the car until at least the third date. Nothing kills romance faster than someone realizing you're worth more than their college education. I had girls who were only interested in the car and girls who were completely intimidated by it. Finding someone who could see past the Bugatti to the guy who still got genuinely excited about finding quarters in the couch cushions was harder than I expected. My family's reaction was mixed. My dad was proud but worried. My mom was convinced I was having some kind of mental breakdown. My little sister immediately started asking if she could borrow it for prom. "You can't just buy a car that costs more than our house," my mom said during one of our weekly phone calls. "I already did," I pointed out. "That's not the point." But you know what? Despite the stress, the attention, and the constant fear of scratching $3 million worth of automotive art, I don't regret it. The Chiron taught me something important. Money doesn't change who you are, but it definitely changes how people see you. I was still the same guy who worked at a coffee shop, who got excited about free samples at grocery stores, who binged Netflix shows about baking competitions. But now I was that guy with a Bugatti. Some of my best memories are from those early morning drives, when the roads were empty and it was just me in the car. There's something magical about driving through the mountains at sunrise in a machine that can do 200 miles per hour, but is perfectly happy cruising at 65, playing music that sounds like it's coming from inside your head. I'd pull over at scenic overlooks and just sit there, trying to process how my life had changed so dramatically. 6 months earlier, I'd been worried about whether I could afford gas money. Now I was sitting in a car that cost more per mile than most people's daily salary. The pixel pet market eventually crashed, as all bubbles do. Sparkles is probably worth about $50 now, if that, but I'm okay with that. He gave me an incredible gift. Not just the money, but the experience of taking a crazy risk and having it pay off in ways I never could have imagined. I still have the Chiron. She's sitting in a climate-controlled garage now, properly insured and maintained. I drive her on special occasions, weekend trips, and whenever I need a reminder that sometimes the most impossible dreams can come true in the most unexpected ways. People ask me for investment advice now, as if accidentally getting rich from digital pets makes me some kind of financial genius. The truth is, I have no idea what I'm doing. I got lucky, incredibly, impossibly lucky. But I learned something valuable. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones you make with your heart instead of your head. I kept Sparkles longer than I should have because I cared about him. I bought the Chiron because it was my dream car, not because it was a good investment. These days I'm back in school, studying business and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. I drive a normal car to campus, a nice one, but nothing that attracts attention. The Chiron comes out on weekends for special occasions. And whenever I need to remember that life is full of possibilities we never see coming. I still get updates about Sparkles. His new owner sends photos of him in different digital environments, surrounded by other rare pets. He looks happy. I like to think he remembers our time together, when we were both just trying to figure out how to survive in a world that seemed way too big for us. Last week, I got a message from someone offering me $2 million for my expertise in digital collectibles. They want me to consult on their new blockchain game. I haven't decided whether to respond, but I'll tell you what I told my little sister when she asked for the secret to getting rich quick. There isn't one. I got lucky. Incredibly, impossibly, ridiculously lucky. But luck favors the people who are willing to take risks, who aren't afraid to look foolish, and who sometimes make decisions based on love rather than logic. So that's my story. How I went from making lattes to owning a Bugatti at 21, all because I was nice to a digital hamster named Sparkles. It's not the kind of story you can plan or replicate. It's the kind of story that only happens when you're brave enough to take a chance on something that sounds completely insane. And you know what? I'd do it all again. Even knowing how stressful it would be, how much my life would change, how many awkward conversations with concerned family members I'd have to endure. Because at the end of the day, I'm 21 years old and I own a Bugatti Chiron, and that's pretty cool. Thanks for listening to my ridiculous story. Remember, be nice to your digital pets. You never know where it might lead.
Somebody help me get over it. Somebody help me, yeah. Somebody help me get over it. Somebody help me.